Okay, hello everyone. Welcome and thanks for joining us on the fourth session of Helping Your Parents Move. Today we have the honor of chatting with Christine Forget. She is the owner and chief bottle washer at Sylva
Senior living
Solutions, yes. So like Christine said, she's a neighbor of mine and a good friend of mine, and she's been in the industry for eons, knows it like the back of her hand, and is extremely well connected. So, and I know she's a very busy lady, so I'm very happy that she's agreed to spend some time with us today. We are going to be talking about the following, and before I pass this on to Christine. So we're going to talk about the psychology of choosing the best housing solution for your parents. Okay. How to have that constructive and respectful conversation to your parents, with your parents. Like we've talked before on this program, these conversations can be difficult, and we want to make sure that we are being respectful and also gently nudging our parents to help with putting a plan together. Common misconceptions about retirement residence is a huge one for me. I had someone say something to me the other day that just floored me. The words that they use to describe these facilities kind of broke my heart a little bit.
I totally want to hear what that was.
Yeah, that's lots of misconceptions there. And then the newest trends and options in independent living, because there's more of us, more of the downsizing demographic in our society. And so there are up and coming trends on different ways of living. It doesn't always have to be sort of the cookie cutter that we're used to. There's lots of different options. So without further ado, Christine, you have the floor. Take it away.
Well, I love this format because oftentimes you get into this like slide deck lecture series. So if we can keep this conversational, that's where I thrive. And I can talk and talk and talk. So Anna and I, when Anna started this venture of supporting families, helping their parents, we had a whole conversation about this kind of while she was asking me to come on and stuff. So usually, or these days, when I'm talking to families, and maybe I should even back up a little bit. So as Anna said, I've been in the industry for about 25 years, and my mom was a geriatric nurse in a long-term care facility. My brother worked there, my aunts and uncles. It was kind of like a family business. So growing up, I've been around elder care my entire life. And I've started off in long-term care, moved to the retirement industry, and something like 2013-ish, I started a consulting company. So I spend a lot of time talking to people just like this about navigating the different options. I also, when I was working in the industry, I did a lot of training. So I would train the people that worked in retirement homes and seniors housing. And I'm not trying to give you my bio here, but I have a reason for explaining all this. Is I train the leasing consultants of retirement homes, and I do it at Algonquin, so I have a whole course. And I spent a lot of time talking about the psychology of the transition. And so that's my point of sharing this with you, is that there's a lot of emotions going on that I think maybe a lot of people don't consider. So when we go out and we buy something, whether it be like a trip or a car or new clothes or a piece of art, it's because we either want or need it. But for seniors that are perhaps later in life, they probably don't want to move to a retirement residence. So most people, if you talk to them, how many times have we heard this? I don't know. I'm never moving to a retirement residence. I'm never moving to like one of those places. I'm staying in this house forever. And I find that comment or that statement, and I've heard various versions of that statement, which I won't say on this podcast or this Zoom. I find that statement really interesting because the reality is, for some seniors, perhaps those that are a bit more advanced or a bit older and having more challenges, is the big house the best place to age? Although we all want to age in place, I've met people that are living in 3,000, 4,000 square feet. It was the family homestead. And we've had these conversations and it's like, okay, so you must live in Like, do you live in a couple of rooms and your stuff lives in everywhere else? And usually that's the case. Like, they're living in the living room and the kitchen and their bedroom, but 3,000 square feet is quite a big house. Their stuff and probably their kids' stuff and maybe their grandkids' stuff is all living in every other part of the house. So it's interesting. The psychology of it is like, why are they holding on to this so hard? When as children, we might recognize that, you know what, you're not thriving in the big house per se. You might be thrive better in an alternative housing situation. And it's not always retirement residences, although I think as you get older, perhaps when the family comes talking, you start to feel like, oh my God, they're going to talk to us about the retirement residence. There's plenty of other options out there. But so that you go circle back and you go, okay, well, why is mom and dad digging their heels in about this 3,000, 4,000 square foot house? And if we actually pull the onion back and we start to go, okay, what is it? It's an emotional journey. And for some, it's about control, right? It's about maintaining control. And we have to have empathy around the fact that for some older seniors, perhaps they're losing control about certain parts of their life, whether it be their, physical, maybe they're having some challenges with mobility, maybe there's cognition challenges, maybe they've lost their driver's license, maybe they've lost a spouse, so they're experiencing a lot of loss that perhaps they're maintaining their feeling of control is now surrounded by the house. And control is kind of a bad word to use. And I'm not a psychologist, so this is just all observations that I've ever made. It's control is maintaining what is familiar. So like the family homestead. I've heard people say to me, well, my kids won't visit me anymore. They won't have a place to stay. I find that statement fascinating because, some people, yes, they live in different cities and so on. But for those that, like, I've met a lot of seniors that have made that exact statement to me, my kids won't have anywhere to stay if they come. And I'm like, well, when's the last time they stayed over? Oh, it's been about 10, 20 years. Or, I want to be able to cook the whole family, cook a dinner, Christmas or Thanksgiving for the whole family. Okay, when's the last time that's happened? Well, that's, it's been about 10 to 20 years. I usually go to them. So there's a lot of kind of psychology that's kind of happening behind the scenes that I think you need to recognize or have empathy and compassion about those feelings about the transition and what is important to them during that transition. Just segueing into having that respectful conversation, I think when you recognize those challenges that maybe somebody has in their mind when it comes to making the transition and the reasons behind it, then you can dig a little bit deeper about why those things are important. So what is it important about, having a place for Ray to stay when he comes for a visit? What part about that is important? And having those tough conversations, because the more I find you try to tell somebody what to do, especially a senior, the more they're going to dig their heels and repel whatever solution you offer them. So try to have maybe more motivational conversations, more motivational dialogues that get to the root of why they don't want to maybe move. What is it about the house that they want to stay? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I often talk to people about, it's not just about moving from place A to place B, whatever that might be, but it's really, like you said, there's a lot of loss, right? Potentially that they're going through. And one of those things that I realized with my parents specifically is my dad's been making wine since I can remember. So lots of wine making paraphernalia. My mom used to cook for 40 of us. So it's a change of lifestyle too, right? It's a loss of things that they do that they've loved to do for years and years. And now if they're moving into a condo or a different residence, they can't do those things anymore, or they
feels
have
like
to
a
do it somewhere
sacrifice.
else. So
Yeah, it feels like a sacrifice.
right. So just, we're all of the same mind. We're all caring, loving people, but just put ourselves in those shoes and think about those things. Like, okay, well, mom might be resistant, and maybe it's because she can't garden anymore and she loves to garden. So maybe try to find, well, you could, like, my parents are in a condo now, but my brother owns a home not far off. So my mom gets her gardening, fix in at their place. And so that those types of things are seemingly unimportant, but very important to the person who is considering the move, right? It's a big deal to them.
And here's the other one that I've come across recently, and I've been in this industry a long time, and this was one that was really brought to my attention. Sometimes, so I like how you talk about the loss of lifestyle, the sacrifice in a retirement residence, for example. You go in and they cook all your food, and and so for perhaps the older generation, the ones who are currently 90, who are potentially like the homemaker, that was their sense of value, right? Maintaining the home. But so if somebody else is doing it for you, maybe that's going to feel like a loss again. Like, where's my sense of value? But I also, this is the newest one that was brought up to me, and I find this one really fascinating and totally makes sense, is that for some of us who have lived this kind of simple life, especially if it's a homemaker, 90-year-old simple life, we've met lots of people that, have a variety of different incomes and social demographics. Especially in Ottawa, I find we can come across people who are multimillionaires but are living have never upgraded their house and are living in the same chair they've had for 40 years. Very, very conservative here in Ottawa. Some people don't feel deserving. They don't feel deserving of that really what could be perceived as a Shangri-La lifestyle, being served, right? Mm-hmm. They were the servers, and now they don't feel deserving of being served. And that is a whole other ball of psychology right there. But that came to me recently that I was like, yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm.
Makes sense.
So understanding all of that emotion and breaking it down to that kind of mindset level of mom and dad, I think helps you start off a conversation. Because I've met a lot of families that are like, nope, you're going. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't work.
No, that doesn't work. Yeah. Any questions, guys, so far before Christine continues?
No, we're good.
Misconceptions about retirement residences. Christine.
Okay, tell me what you got.
Oh, so we're dealing with a couple anyway, and the words he used were like, I can't remember exactly the term, but it was where you go to die or something to do with death. And I thought, that's really very sad, because I've been to a lot of these places and they're lovely.
Where does that come from, right? Well, I don't know who these people were or how old they were.
Comes from lack of knowledge, right? Of they're thinking old school,
institution. They're thinking of institution. I mean, if you're 80 or 90, what in your mind, where did your parents go? Which probably didn't, like the lifespan wasn't 90 to 100 at that time. But where did they go? It would have been very everything was institutional. The place I worked at with all my parents and family, whatever, it was run by nuns. It was super institutional. In fact, they probably make horror movies about it today. I don't.
Sorry, was there a question there before Christine goes on?
No, I heard it referred to as God's waiting room.
Yeah, I've heard that. And that comes back to that sense of purpose, right? That self-identity. Like, we all need it. And if you look at people that are living to 100, it's because they have it. And so you need to have a reason to get up in the morning. And if you're a homemaker and your purpose is cleaning the house, doing the laundry, cooking the meals, and then all of a sudden somebody else is doing that for you, well, then you need to have a sense of purpose. You need to segue that somewhere else. Everybody's going to be different. So I can't tell you what would be good for you, but having a reason to get up is key. The retirement homes. So there's a stereotype, a monster stereotype. And so when I'm actually training the retirement homes, like when I go to Algonquin and I stand up and future general managers and I talk to them, we recognize this. We acknowledge that there's a monster size stereotype. It's, you know, a place where people are going to go to die. It's the place where all the old people are. It's God's waiting room. I've met people that are like 95 who walk in and go, oh my God, everyone's old here. And I'm like, you are older than everybody here. But everybody, and I find more now, like this era, like this time, age is simply a number, period. Mm-hmm. Like there is no more you're old because you're 80-year-old. I've met so many 80, 90-year-olds that are living like what we call them teenagers. They are living like rock stars. They're dating, they're going to the bar, they're going to the disco. And yes, we'll get to that. That place does exist for those teenagers. And then you have the older mindset, more traditional ones. So there's like age is just a number now. There's no, you're 80, so you're old, honestly. And, you know, misconceptions are that I think deep down you've heard it, but you have to see it. There are retirement homes that do have people sleeping in chairs. You would walk in and yep, there's Mrs. Jones having a snooze with a blanket on her. And that's what I think a lot of seniors have in their minds. It's like, oh my God, there's nothing happened here. I no longer have value in myself. I just gonna sit on a chair and sleep the day away. Mm-hmm. Those exist. I'm not gonna lie, they're out there. But then there's also ones that are more resort-like. They have movie theaters, swimming pools, aquafit, drumming class, wine club, wine cellars, like fine dining. There's a little bit, when it comes to retirement homes, there's honestly something for everybody. Because the place with Mrs. Jones sleeping on a chair might be more suited to somebody that does require more care needs and does have care, you know, issues related to, you know, sleeping more and things like that. Whereas the other more active places could cater to people who are just more active. So that's kind of what our organization does when it comes to helping navigate all of this, is that when people call SOLVA, we kind of narrow down what is your wants, preferences, and your goals for living. Like, how do you want to live? And that's usually one of the first questions I ask people. How do you want your mom and dad to live for the next 5-10 years? And what is important to you? Because because we've been in every single retirement home, we know how they operate. We can actually go, okay, these are the places that I think you're going to be most suited for. And this is why. And these are the things you need to look at. So I think some of those misconceptions, yeah, they're real, but if you go and you start looking at random places without some guidance, you're going to come across the good, the bad, and the ugly, opposed to what you actually want. And that could scare you. So for some of you guys that are looking for parents, bringing mom and dad to the right place is probably key. Knowing in the back of their mind that they're freaked out over, they think that's the place where all the old people are, bringing them to the place where all the old people are is going to go complete opposite from what you want to have it, if that makes sense.
So taking them to the places that it would best be suited for them and their lifestyle and their interests. And, you know, a lot of people don't know that a lot of places you can go and stay for a couple weeks or a month just to try it out. It's not, you know, there's lots of little programs and little things that people don't know exist that may help make the transition or the decision making a little easier, so that mom and dad don't feel like you're just dropping them off and see you later. And so Christine and her firm, and I know that Linda, your parents are out west. I'm sure there's organizations out there like this too, where, you know, rather than fumbling through the process and trying to find the good, the bad, and the ugly, dealing with someone like Christine who knows the industry and can say, you know, don't take them to A, B, and C, because that's just perpetuating what they think about these facilities. is take them to, you know, X, Y, and Z, because they're brighter, they're friendlier, they're sort of where your parents would be happy at. So that's very important to know, and a really big a key in helping helping them transition well, so that they're happy and not stressed out.
Yeah.
What I said.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about sort of the newest trends? I know that, like, you know, I'm on social media a lot, and there's lots of trends that are coming from different countries where they've got, you know, seniors living with university students. So the university students get a cheaper rate in rent, but then they're there to help seniors. There's you know, a small group of seniors who buy a large property with 5, 6, 7 bedrooms, and they sort of make their own retirement home, and then hire out help. I've been to recently a seniors apartment in Manotick, and oh good God, I was kind of thinking, I can't wait to get older so I can live here. They were beautiful apartments located right downtown Manotick, overlooking the river, beautiful places. So there's so many options. So if you could talk about, Christine, some options that people may not be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, so yeah, so a plethora of options. So if we're talking about what exists in the world that I'm aware of, like the US in their sheer population and size, you know, we all know about the snowbird communities going down south. In the US, usually, like, they reference it as something called CCRCs, which are continuum of care retirement communities. They're like these monster-sized campuses. Have we all heard of the villages? Well, that would be kind of considered a CCRC. It's like you've got these totally independent bungalows, and then you've got this kind of transition option. So you've got the bungalow, the apartment, the retirement home, assisted living, long-term care, and it's all on one campus. So you're never leaving your community. You're all like part of the community, because we know one of the challenges about leaving the big house is when you've lived in the house for 40 years, this is what you're familiar with. And routine is everything for seniors. So keeping somebody into the community has some benefits. So we don't see a lot of these CCRCs in Canada just yet. Partly, I think, because like sheer population size. Like when you go to Florida, it's like the amounts of people that are down there. Some of these CCRCs, which if you haven't heard of the villages, look it up. It's kind of, when we talk about teenagers, it's teenagers gone wild. Yeah, everything happens there. There's another one down there that I really love. It's called Margaritaville Latitude. So Jimmy Buffett has these hotels chain. So he decided he's getting older, so I'm going to create a retirement chain. And it's, you know, again, seniors 65, 55 plus that are living this kind of great life. In Canada, we're actually seeing more of this happening. So I just said we don't have a lot of it, but we're starting to see it. So the new trends are, we have, like, I'm going to back it forward. So we've always had long-term care. That's always been an option. Long-term care, though, is not, it's regulated by the government. It is government funded, so to speak, but you have to qualify. You can't just call up long-term care and say, I'm moving it, because that's not how it works. You have to actually need it to get there. So then you have the retirement home industry, and retirement offers everything from independent living through to assisted living, which assisted living is kind of like long-term care, but private pay. You pay for it all. Government and long-term care pays for half of it. And then retirement, you have a plethora of options. You have totally independent living, resort style, to that assisted living, but retirement tends to be full service, meaning they do the 3 meals for the most part, housekeeping, laundry, so to speak. For those that are more independent, that maybe want more autonomy, more independence, want to do more things on their own, we're starting to see these things called 55 plus active adult 55 plus communities, which are kind of maybe a bit more like 65 plus. There are basically apartment communities with lifestyle built in. So as an example, in Ottawa, you have the one that Anna's talking about, the Miller, that's in Manotick. You have the Wellings of Stittsville. You have Canoe Bay coming. You've got a number of these now new communities that have apartments specifically for that demographic. And then they build in things like having restaurants on site. They've actually included, say, one meal included in their price. They have concierge services. They have different activities and programs catered to that independent individual. So you can still, you're not sacrificing in these communities. You still have your full kitchen. You still have your laundry. So you're still cooking breakfast and maybe lunch. You're still doing your housekeeping. You're still doing your laundry, but you're getting the social that you might not be getting in the big house. So you break bread and have dinner with other people, which we all know that's where the best times are, over a meal. And there's different programs like fitness and so on, and you have opportunities to try things and do things again. So those communities are really great for that. And then you have what hasn't really ballooned yet that I've seen anywhere, but you do have people talking about those golden girl models, and where they're, find some friends and we're going to buy a house together, as my mother-in-law likes to call it. We're going to build a compound, and we're all going to have our thing together. I think as we see the boomers come into the market, we're going to start to see a lot more of that kind of thing happen. I haven't seen it kind of blow up just yet, but in Ottawa, per se, you've got programs like where they link up younger people with older people, roommates. The caveat about that I always like to tell somebody is just be cautious, because you still need to screen these people. Yeah. You bring somebody into your house, you are now the landlord. So if your parent is compromised and they've moved somebody into their house, then guess what? You are the adult child that now needs to become the landlord, because you need to protect your parent. And then same thing goes if Blanche moves into with Dorothy, I don't know whose house it was, but somebody in that scenario is the landlord. And as much as we go into these situations with, good faith, we all know that things can go amiss, and it's better to approach it with all the risks on the table and all the situations and scenarios. And then, we can go further to even say a lot of people move in with their family. So they might move in, sell their home, and decide either they're going to move in with their family, or the family together will buy a big house with an in-law suite and so on. A couple of things that I've seen along the way, because I've met people that have done this, is, if you're going to move an older parent into your house, you want to make sure that your house is accessible, or your future house is accessible. So I've met people down the road that, for all good intentions, moved mom and dad into the basement, which they outfitted as an in-law suite. Well, then all of a sudden, mom and dad could not get up the stairs. So that's a risk. And then some people, the new trend is these little coach homes in your kind of backyard or side yard. I always say one of the biggest reasons why somebody comes to us that has to move is because of social isolation. Remember, we all need a sense of purpose. So making sure your parent has a reason to get up in the morning. Sometimes if you move them into your situation, your house, or in your coach home in your yard, will they be isolated?
Yeah, that's what I want.
Will they be by themselves all day? Do they have, you need to, like, if they're going to move in your house, they still need to have those connections in the community that's peer on peer. They cannot just be about the grandkids, because as much as the grandkids are very it adds to their spirit and joie de vivre. They also need, we all need something for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So those are things to think about for sure. But there is lots of new trends. Lots of people like those apartments. A lot of seniors are really, really digging that active adult lifestyle. It's a trend that I see a lot of people getting excited about because, as I said to somebody recently, those are the places seniors want to move, not have to move, where the retirement residence sometimes still comes across as the place they have to move.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons for having these kinds of conversations with our parents and families is so that there is a plan, and so that maybe we're moving when we want to move as opposed to moving when we have to move, because that seems a lot more painful when it's a have to versus a want to.
Well, the conversation is tougher when it's a have to.
Yeah.
And Solva as an entity, I would say probably about 90% of our clients are have to moves.
Okay.
They've avoided the conversation until it became very critical and they had to move. And it just like hurts my heart whenever I see somebody that unfortunately is no longer in the driver's seat because they didn't have these contingency plans. And the contingency plan is everybody wants to age in place. Everybody wants to stay in the big house, or they might be more willing to downsize to an apartment. And that age in place is in any of those scenarios. But when it comes to like elder care and what happens, if my mind or my body isn't at its best and I need some more I need some support. If you know before you have to where you would go, then you're in control. Doesn't mean you're ever going to go there. It's just about making that contingency plan.
Right.
But I like it more when families look at long-term care as a contingency plan, because I've met a few families with a loved one that had some really serious advanced issues, and they waited till they got into the hospital, and the hospital saying, no, like they're failing to cope at home. And they're saying, okay, we got to go to long-term care. Well, unfortunately, long-term care is a five-year waiting list.
Wow.
So I always say, get on the long-term care wait. When you can qualify, get on it, because you can always say no. When they call you, you don't have to say yes. You can say no. But if you're not on that list,
right,
in 5 years, if you need it, you're at the bottom of the list. So it's just a bit of a strategy in terms of how you're thinking about things. But people are really, really resistant to it. I think if you look at it like it's a contingency, it's just a plan. We need to all have different plans in our lives, and it's just one of these plans. And long-term care, again, you can't just arbitrarily go on the wait list. You have to qualify for it. So that means you need to have a reason. But if you have an early reason, like let's give an example. I've been diagnosed early on with dementia. Going on that list, early in 5 years, you don't know what life's going to be like, but at least by getting to choose the place, you're in the driver's seat. If you wait till the hospital happens, you might not get to choose the place and stay in the driver's seat. So these are just thinking about these plans early and having these, I always find it fascinating because we plan for our life. We make all these great plans for our lives. We actually, as a society norm, we plan for death. People go out and do these funeral planning things. We don't plan for our elder care or our elder years where we might need some progressive care. No, it's almost a faux pas to plan for that. People just kind of, it's never going to happen to me. I'm never going to get older, and it's.
I live forever. Yes, that's what we get. That's awesome. Does anyone have any questions at all about anything, even if Christine hasn't touched upon it?
No, that's really useful. We may follow up on some of those things.
Great. Rebecca, did you learn anything? There's not going to be a test, but.
Yeah, no, I made a few notes. I think, losing the things that they normally do is I hadn't even thought about that. So yeah, for sure. That was interesting. I enjoy the psychology part of this. So that's great. And what else did I note? Loss of space to have people visit. I'm not sure that that's really a consideration for my parents. They'd know more than I would, but definitely, you know, kind of losing that gardening things, or you know, even just space to do woodworking or whatever the case may be.
Exactly.
But as a note, those things exist in different, like in different places. They exist in the 55 plus apartment communities. They've thought of these things. Like those communities are like what I'm sharing with you, I share with them. So they think about the stuff in their design. So don't factor things out because you think you're going to lose something, or they think, like it exists. Like the Wellings of Stittsville, for example, they have this whole woodworking club. And so even through COVID, they found ways that these, it's all guys, sorry. I don't know. It's a gentleman thing. I guess ladies can come, but nobody ever does. So they were whittling, they had an instructor and they were whittling little Christmas gnomes, and they, you know, they've got programs that are really fun, and it's a good experience. It's almost like, at least even in retirement residence, these things exist too. But I always look at it like, you know, for somebody who's living alone in the big house. Actually, sorry, I'm going to back this up. Somebody once explained it to me like this. I look at my life, I'm 70 years old. I look at my life as a crossroads. So I'm at this crossroads in life. I can continue to do my thing that I do now, which is like, I go out during the day, I putter around, I watch TV, it's 8 o'clock at night, I go to bed. Or I could try something new, which maybe is, you know, looking at these active adult communities, and maybe I'm going to have opportunities that I've thought I would never do again. I never thought I would go to the movies with friends again. I never thought I would learn a new hobby like woodworking, whittling little Christmas gnomes. I never thought I would be playing beer pong and doing shots at a bar or going to the disco. And she said, I'm going to take a leap here and I'm going to try this path because I only live once. And I want to have, life's not over. Just because you're 80, it's not over. You can still have all these things. And I think a lot of 80-year-olds think that it is, but it's not. Remember, it's just the number at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's really true, because a big part of this is social interaction, right? And being connected with the outside world. And even if it's like a couple, like my mom and dad have their family, but they don't really do anything outside the family, right? So what a great opportunity to be in a place where there's other people, your peers, you know, and lots of different things to try. And I think that's huge in maintaining people's health, mental health and physical health as well. To get up in the morning and have something interesting to do and people to talk to, and, you know, beer pong to play with. So that's awesome. Linda, did you have any questions or anything, love?
No questions, just learning a lot. I don't think, I think my parents are in the group as it's the place you go to die.
Okay.
So they have a couple of steps in between. And I think the seminar is also teased out for myself and my sister that my parents have different ideas about what comes next, and they don't really align. So it's like,
I've seen that before too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So mom wants one thing, dad wants something else type thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest, if that's the case, go online and watch some YouTube videos on motivational interviewing. So it's all about changing how you talk to somebody. It's almost like you're going to have conversations in open-ended questions versus closed-ended questions. So like, so dad, why do you want to stay in the big house? Okay. Like if I like asking more whys and understanding the root themes, like getting down to the root reason, but getting them to acknowledge the root reason, not you, like kind of like a therapist would do, then you might have a more engaging conversation, because usually it's a lower level. So you could look up some videos on motivational interviewing, kind of like a therapist would do. And also maybe even like there's something called the 5 whys. So asking, which I just learned about today on from one of my colleagues, look that up, and that might help you have a deeper conversation with some of your family members.
5 whys. I'm going to write that down too.
All of this, though, like honestly, motivational interviewing, 5 whys, that you can even look up I'm getting really psychology with you guys. The trans theoretical model of change. You guys are it's a psychology class. I'm not a psychologist at all. This is just stuff I pick up along the way. But having I guess if you go into it, having a more meaningful conversation to dig out, to extract from them. What is it? Because you saying here, I don't want to go to the place where the old people live, or it's not the real reason. There's something else holding on. And it could be fear. Like, I'm afraid of getting old. If I make a change, that's it. I've given up. Maybe they could be embarrassed. I don't want my friends to know why I'm moving to the retirement residence.
And they may not even know themselves, quite honestly, right?
100%.
They may have this fear of this one thing, which really isn't a thing, and they're so afraid of that they're not.
It could be ambivalence. It could just be
Yeah,
sheer,
it could be-
like, I don't want to. My house is full of stuff. I don't want to deal with it, so I'm just going to do nothing.
Gonna stay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, I'm turning 54 this weekend, and I pass myself in the mirror and I look at myself and go, not just because in my mind I'm still 20, but then when I look right, I don't look 20. Like, so I imagine it's the same thing. I'm making a joke of it, but it's kind of the same thing. We're not our age mentally, right? So when we're faced with these, I am 80 or I am 75, okay, like, it's just coming to grips with where you are in life, right? And
can you imagine at 80, we don't feel 80, that right. You could go to the place and you're going to play beer pong and
awesome.
meet a new friend, maybe go for a little dance, have a smooch in the corner, which I've seen a lot of.
That's great. Yeah. Okay, well, I think that might be it. I've put Christine's information in the chat if anyone wants to reach out to her. I'm sure she'd be happy to help. And if you guys have any other questions about this, feel free to reach out to me and I'll pass you on to the right person if I can't answer your question. And
can I just mention, there's no cost to talk to us. Like, our service is entirely free. So if you ever want to just have this kind of conversation and like throw things at us with like, what would you do with this? What do you think about this? There's no cost. It's entirely a free service. So this is how I talk to everybody. So it's my pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Christine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I'll see you next week and we'll be talking about financial stuff. Woohoo! Have everyone have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice to see you, Anna.
Nice to see you too. Stay well.